Hey, I'm sorry, okay? I know you're offended by the title of this video, but please don't march off to leave a comment to say you want me dead just yet. You can do that at the end. Give me just a couple of minutes to explain myself. Your mother raised you better than to comment without finishing at least the first 30 seconds of the video. Non-binary people really came into the mainstream in this last decade, kind of riding on the coattails of trans women's increased visibility in the media. So naturally the question quickly turned to the most important part of our existence. Who will fuck us? It is sometimes said in the lore of our people that only omnisexuals and plurisexuals and pansexuals are attracted to non-binary people, and that gay, straight and bi people never can be. And in fact, if a gay, straight or bi person does find themselves attracted to a non-binary person, then they should change their sexual identity label immediately. Other tales claim that a bisexual can be defined by their attraction to exclusively women and non-binary people, even if the only non-binary people they're attracted to are those who look rather a lot like women. And in the deepest depths of the World Wide Web, one can find scoliosexuality and heterosexuality, sexual orientations for people who are incapable of being attracted to men and women and are only attracted to non-binary people. But some tales tell, as I will hear, that anyone can be attracted to non-binary people, and that this attempt to shove non-binary people into a Victorian system of sexual orientation is equivalent to trying to shove an elephant into a coin purse, which I guess could work if you break the coin purse. And if the coin purse is broken, is it still a coin purse? It is usually argued that having specific orientations who are attracted to non-binary people as opposed to those who can never be affirms the genders of non-binary people, while the idea that anyone can be attracted to us invalidates us, that a non-binary person should feel invalidated if a straight or a gay person is attracted to them. But I, a non-binary priestess myself, say that the latter case actually affirms non-binarism above all else. Please keep an open mind. And besides, let's not act like you have anything better to do right now than listen to an aging transsexual talk about Tumblr politics on YouTube. We have made the mistake of trying to insert non-binary people into a binary system, and in doing so made the bizarre assertion that attraction to non-binary people works in the same distinct way that attraction to men and women works. And that's just not true. The fact that there are gay and straight people in the world, those attracted exclusively to men or to women, has led us to assert that there must be an equivalent type of person to non-binary people. Attraction to non-binary people must have the potential to be restricted in the same way attraction to men and women can be, hence scoliosexuality. In seeking validation for non-binary genders, we are attempting to emulate man and woman, the only real reference point we have for gender. A quick note before I go onwards, I am referring to cultures specific to where I grew up, and I'm not going to be talking about cultures I am not or have never been a part of and am not entitled to have an opinion about. So, on with the show. So what is gender? The distinction between biological sex and gender as a role originates in the 1950s and didn't become widespread until the 1970s, when feminist theory popularized the idea of biological sex versus gender as a social construct. So at their core, the genders man and woman are rooted in biological sex, but gender is not sex, as gender is social. And while obviously women and men can be anything, gender in society is made up of typical recognizable characteristics which have defined us as social categories for as far back as we can remember. Characteristics such as grammatical gender and pronouns, typical sex characteristics, clothing, and other ways of decorating oneself, and social roles. If you left your home now, I'd be willing to bet there's a very good chance that the first person you met on the street, you'd be able to accurately recognize what gender they are. Recognizability is maybe even a feature of gender, and maybe also contrast. Women and men's distinct contrast is part of what makes them what they are. Short hair versus long hair, big versus small, hard versus soft, smelly versus flower fresh. Men are generally recognizable because of secondary sex characteristics, because of clothing made specifically for men, because of gendered haircuts. Even when gender non-conforming, there is a clear shift from one side to the other. A gender non-conforming woman has short hair, for instance. When a man is wearing a dress, we all understand clearly that this is gender non-conforming behavior, specifically because he is wearing something culturally considered to be for women. The dress is gendered. Obviously it shouldn't be, but toilet signs say otherwise. But a man or a woman can't gender non-conform in a way which uses non-binarism. You can't dress like a non-binary person. There might be a gender-neutral section at the clothes shop, but there isn't, and probably never will be, a non-binary section. So what the gosh darn tootin' heck is a non-binary person? Well, non-binary people cannot be described by the following. Pronouns. A non-binary person can have any pronouns under the sun. Sex characteristics. Non-binary people can have any sex characteristics. There aren't typical sex characteristics which make it easier to recognize a typical non-binary person. Gender presentation. Non-binary people can be feminine, androgynous, or masculine, or just look like aliens, or quite often grandmas. Societal roles. There are no preconceived social roles for non-binary people whatsoever. Transition and dysphoria. Some non-binary people transition medically or socially, while others don't, and some have gender dysphoria, while others don't. Gendered names. Many non-binary people keep their name assigned at birth, even if it is gendered, while others choose gender-neutral names, random nouns, or monosyllabic noises. Non-binary people are not easily recognizable. For example, India Moore and Sam Smith. You can't transition to non-binary. There are no social standards for non-binary, and there's no gender non-conformity which men and women don't already sometimes utilize. I feel like blue lipstick is the closest thing non-binary people have to a unique fashion statement, but even with blue lipstick, it's clear what the idea is. It's makeup, traditionally for women, but the color is not the color girls are supposed to wear. In fact, it's a color seen as a boy's color, so it's a girl thing done in a boy way. There's no spectrum of gender expression, but an overlap of the binaries of expression. There's a Terry Pratchett quote about Lord of the Rings which comes to mind. Bear with me, I'm just gonna have my Lord of the Rings moment. J.R.R. Tolkien has become a sort of mountain, appearing in all subsequent fantasy in the way that Mount Fuji appears so often in Japanese prints. Sometimes it's big and up close, sometimes it's a shape on the horizon, sometimes it's not there at all, which means that the artist either has made a deliberate decision against the mountain, which is interesting in itself, or is, in fact, standing on Mount Fuji. The same can be said of man and woman. Either the person has made a deliberate decision against man and woman, or they are standing on the foundations of what it is to be a man or a woman. Are people really attracted to gender, rather than the characteristics which are typical to gender, to man and to woman? Miley Cyrus and Basit are both non-binary people, and their genders are totally 100% valid. I'm not calling that into question. I just want to ask you a question. Which one is a gay man more likely to be attracted to? I think we all know the answer to that question, and it's fine. It doesn't make anyone less non-binary, in my opinion. Once upon a time, sexual orientation was conceptualized as attraction based on sex. In the 19th century, we came up with the clear distinction of a homosexual group and a heterosexual group based on observable behaviors. Arguably, these distinctions were invented by people to whom these were the most obvious, such as Karl Heinrich Ulrichs, who was a gay man. As a gay man, he recognized his sexuality to be distinct from straight men's and bisexual men's. The categories of men and women were clear and vital to the distinction of gay versus straight. The idea that we are actually attracted to gender and not sex is very recent and not even necessarily widely understood, as people still often use sex and gender interchangeably. The Western non-binary identity is more recent even than gender, and seems to actually come from that distinction rather than the other way around. The idea of gender came from sex, and the idea of neither gender comes from the idea of gender. While Ulrichs was able to recognize something fairly objectively observable to anyone in society due to the vast majority of people being split clearly into these two gendered categories, that's not the case for people attracted to the incredibly diverse group that is non-binary people. As we discussed before, there are many things which distinguish a particular gender category, such as sex characteristics, which aren't necessarily binary, even on the occasions they were at birth, social roles, gender expression, clothing, haircuts, whether your eyebrows are on fleek or fading away like Tom Holland in Infinity War. And in my experience of transitioning, besides the ever-faithful bisexual, the average gay and average straight have begun to have very different responses to me based on a variety of factors, none of which are really my gender identity, because I've known since I was a child that I was a gender failure. Gay men used to be attracted to me, and now they're not. I am so sad that they're not. Is it really all that likely that it's gender identity which people are attracted to. I think one of the main problems some non-binary people themselves have with this idea that anyone could be attracted to them is the idea that their gender is not affirmed unless their gender plays by rules similar to man and woman. If non-binary is going to be a new kind of gender, exist outside of and beyond tradition, then it has to be a gender which can exist outside of and beyond sexual orientation. And non-binary people don't need to be defined by who is interested in sleeping with and dating us. If we really want to frame non-binarism in the mold of man and woman, we are limiting what that is. We are reifying the social structures of gender uncritically. We're used to gender having function, as having class. Gender traditionally isn't just about contrast, but about hierarchy. The concept of gender was popularized by the feminism which fought to oppose that hierarchy. So what class is non-binary? Is non-binary below women in rank or between man and woman? Or is that too overly simplistic a way of categorizing a group of people who really can't be categorized? Do we want to be categorized and limited and subject to the same traditional rules of gender as man and woman? Do we want to uphold gender as a tradition when gender is actually just a bit shit? We've really framed so much of the discourse around respecting non-binary people and all trans people really based on who wants to have sex with us. And there's so much anxiety and turmoil surrounding this. In order to create the kind of uniformity required to exclude large enough populations of people, we're going to have to start creating rules about what it is to be a non-binary person. And that's gross. But hey, when you're on your dating apps looking for honeys, you might find people aren't very understanding when it comes to non-binary genders. It's not necessarily even a matter of them not finding you attractive. It may just be that they're a douchebag about pronouns and aren't familiar with trans issues, and it may well be easier in some ways for me to find heterosexuals and plurisexuals who are into me. But I think we ought to be careful here because we may end up absolving people of the responsibility to be kind to trans people by suggesting that their assholery is just a different sexual orientation, thereby validating their cissexism and transphobia, validating sexual orientations where you don't have to be respectful to trans people or analyze your own gender biases. I don't think that's a good move for the future of sexual orientation. Sexual orientation as a concept may still need work, but we need to be very critical about how we reframe this system. I think we're at a point where we could choose to say, yes, non-binary should be considered a third gender in the traditional sense of gender, and there should be separate sexual orientations to express that. And actually, all 64 genders are valid genders which should be taken very seriously and all have their own individual rules. But I think that's like locking yourself in a cage and handing someone else the key. Non-binary has so much potential to challenge gender, to dismantle gender. It should surely be considered a beautiful thing that non-binary exists outside the rules. Gender is so tied into what it is to be human. Our existence has always been defined by whether we are men or women, and all the typical features that come with that. But non-binary gets to question each of those things. Pronouns, fashion, bodies, the nature of attraction itself. I think the mainstreaming of non-binary is encouraging us to comfortably sit back in a position nice and unthreatening to the traditions of gender. We can exist as long as we only reinforce what man and woman are. But I think we can do better. While we are dismantling the idea that gender should be tied to clothes, should be tied to sexual organs, should be tied to pronouns, it's also time to dismantle this idea that sexual orientation is part of what defines and validates us. You are so much more than just your gender. And so are the things that make you a unique hottie. Thanks to all my patrons, and a special thanks to Aaron, Joel H, Nina, Susie S, and Juicy Fantasy Queen Plant Hookups. If you would like to see your name up here too, or just want to support my videos anonymously, check out my Patreon, where you can also get some special treats. Please like and subscribe, and if you want notifications for my next videos, hit the little bell thing as well so you can get notifications. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.